Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's right at noon, and this is going to be almost a full hour presentation. So I'm Eileen Williams. I'm your wellness coordinator for your wellness program and a nurse at Johnson Memorial. And so this is the last Lunch and Learn before your screenings. So if you can let anybody in your department know if they have not done a Lunch and Learn, they need to get one done prior to October 1st. And that information needs to be either given to the wellness representative or sent to me. This will be videoed and will be uploaded onto the wellness portal. They'll answer their questions or post-test and submit those to me or their wellness. So just so that everybody kind of knows. Today we're going to do a presentation on mental health and wellness. Has anybody read the newspaper this morning? Well, here we go. So on the front page, a troubling picture. Mental health events reveal county's struggle. It says the number and data painted a bleak picture among Johnson County residents. 72 people died by suicide between 2019 and 2021. According to the voluntary mental health screenings, 76 county residents were found to have severe depression in 2021, an increase of 13 people from 2020. Indiana, as a whole, has ranked the 13th worst state in prevalence of mental illness in 2022. The state was 48th in trauma survivors, 48th in public health funding, and 50th, dead last, in overall depression. If you are a female and you live in Indiana, you are the most depressed class of person in the country as of 2021. So they held their first mental health specialist and community leaders gathered for the county's first ever State of Mental Health address here just recently. So it's a big thing going on. There's just a lot with COVID scenarios, jobs, just the state of, everything at this point in time. So it's very fitting that we're doing this presentation. Keep your ears and eyes open. Friends, families, coworkers, things you don't know what they're going through. So, reach out if you see someone struggling. So today I want to introduce Christine Turo Shields. She's a licensed social worker as well as co-owner of Kenosis Counseling Center. So she's going to do the presentation for you today. And if you haven't signed in, please sign in over here on your wellness tickets. And the wellness drawing will be next month. So you know. Christine, thank you.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Can you hear me back there? Okay, 'cause if you ever need me to get loud, like use a teacher voice, just let me know. So welcome, I'm glad you're all here. And I've been here in the past, so it's always an honor to come back. And last November, I was with Leadership Johnson County down at Atterbury. And so I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about self-care and mental wellness. I will say, I don't know that I have ever been in front of a crowd that is predominantly men. So that is a really cool thing. And certainly what Eileen shared about the state of women in our area is a struggle and is kind of bleak. But also getting that message across to men is it's important because guys, you tend to go inside and try to figure stuff out on your own. And so my hope and wish for everybody is that you're able to take some gem or nugget with you today. As Eileen said, I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've worked in the field for about 38 years. I started as a addictions therapist, and I'm also trauma certified. So I work with folks in a full range capacity. I also sit on the state board for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And we also know that, suicide rates are still higher than we want, clearly. We're really looking for zero suicides. So that's an initiative that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is pushing forward as well. So, and for everybody watching online, welcome. So it's important to know yourself and know what it is you need. And when I'm working with folks, it's really about coming to greater self-awareness and self-compassion for how you are, because we're all uniquely created, and for those of a faith perspective, divinely created, right? And so understanding that and how you work sometimes can be some of the basics of just mental wellness and self-care. So this quote, "My friend, take care of your psyche. Know thyself. For once we know ourselves, we may learn how to care for ourselves." And that's what this is. This is about coming to know yourself. So I always want people to evaluate how many people identify as an introvert. They don't want to raise their hands. Okay, how about an extrovert? All the extroverts in the... And how many think you have some qualities of both? Okay, so the reason I always ask that of folks is because sometimes people will think that, well, if I'm an introvert, I asked one young lady, I go, "So you're an introvert, right?" And she goes, "Well, I like people." I go, "I know, introverts like people, we know that." But it's really where you draw your energy from, okay? And so introverts draw their energy by some decompression, stepping back, having some introspection, having time for reflection, having some quiet. You come home from a long day where you're at people all the time, bosses, coworkers, you know, probably some of y'all are on your phones or walkie-talkie, people like, I need you. And so introverts just need to pull back, because it's like being a sponge. Once the sponge is saturated, it's just gonna leak, right? And introverts internalize more. Extroverts, we get our energy from people, engagement, stimulation, activity. So after this, I usually do this presentation in a 3 to 5 hour time frame. So when I release you tonight at 5, the introverts will be passed out. But it's important to understand that about yourself, because especially for those people who are introverted, every time you leave your house in the morning, we are going into an extroverted world. America is extroverted, right? It's sounds, schedules, people, demands. And that drains individuals who are introverts. Now, ambiverts have qualities of both, just like people who are ambidextrous. They can use both hands. So I always ask if you feel like you have qualities of both, it's like, where do you need to charge your battery? Do you need to plug into other people, or do you need to plug into yourself? And understanding that and respecting that about yourself is important. Because a lot of times when I'm working with folks who struggle with anxiety or depression, you know, a lot of my clients who are introverted also seem to have higher levels of anxiety oftentimes, especially if it's just that social anxiety, or I just can't do this. And so there have been times when they're like, well, I'm just feeling more anxious. I go, is it that, or is it just that you've absorbed too much, and we need to better manage your saturation level, like how much you have absorbed, and learn how to wring it out. And so different activities wring us out differently. And so the sense of resilience, again, if we know ourselves first, we can restore ourselves. You know, as it says, it's an inability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And that may just be a change in schedule. That may be a change in activity. It's just how you roll. So here's my question. You see a glass half full. What's the question? Okay, is it half full or half empty? That's a good question, but it's not the question. Yeah. Is it twice as big as it needs to be? I hadn't heard that one, but I like that. Any question? So here's the question. How heavy is the glass? What's the answer? How heavy is the glass? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? It's really how long you hold it, right? Because if I stand here right now, it's not really heavy. But if I stood here the whole hour, it would weigh me down. And if I was still holding it at the end of the night, my muscle would fatigue. And so that sense of resilience of how we can roll with things has to do with, again, how we're hardwired. Because some people tend to roll more easily. Things slide off of them. You know, the opposite of a sponge are people who have like a Teflon coating. Stuff doesn't stick. They're like, oh well, you know, the boss was in a bad mood today. Oh well. Somebody else might go, man, I don't know if I'm doing a good job, and he like didn't say hi to me, or you know, she was a little harsh, and you know, and then they just internalize. Okay, we're getting some truth laughs over here. So, willow or oak, as you just think about those two trees, how many people, just when you think about it, can identify with being more like a willow tree? We got just a few. How about oak? Oak, right. That's not uncommon, big, strong men, you know. However, and I offer that just as a picture to think about, again, your mental wellness. And a willow tree, when you think about some of the adjectives that we use to describe it, are, you know, it's bendable, it's flexible, certainly in a sheer wind, it's gonna bend. One of the things that I learned about a willow as I was researching it, it has this really expansive root system, almost as large as the canopy, which is what keeps it grounded. Okay? So think about that. And then we have these strong, sturdy oak trees, right? And oftentimes in a sheer wind, they will snap. Because those strong, sturdy people who are like, I can do this on my own, I don't need help, I'm good, I don't need to talk about it. So just think about that in terms of your own walk in life and who you are and how life hits us. Because for all of us, there's this sense of emotional erosion. Like we have weather patterns in our lives. We have storms, hurricanes, blizzards. And if you think about in life, we can't stop the weather happening, but we can layer ourselves. If it is minus 20 degrees outside and you're going to work, you're gonna layer yourself differently than if it's 102 heat index, right? And so if you think about what's happening in our lives, we've got these work demands that press on us. The sense of, you know, even being here in some ways is a work demand, right? You gotta do it. Or the boss wants something done right now, or you're overloaded. But then that competes with what's going on in our personal lives. In families, you have people getting sick, you have people getting different diagnoses, you have marriages that break up, you have fractured relationships with kids, friendships, people being let go from work, right? Like all of that is erosion on us emotionally. And then health concerns. And it's important to remember that depression and anxiety, those are the two common mental health conditions, Those mental health issues are health issues. So sometimes when I'm working with folks and they're like, well, you know, I'm just lazy. I go, well, maybe you're depressed. Maybe your low energy is a symptom of depression, not that you're a bad employee and you're just not motivated and you're having a hard time getting out of work or getting out of bed to go to work, or that you don't want to really talk with anybody, or somebody says, hey, let's go out and get some drinks after work, and you're like, nah, I'm good. Right? A lot of those characteristics, or people when they're like, well, you know, I'm just a worrier. I go, well, maybe it's actually anxiety. Maybe all that catastrophic thinking, like bad things are going to happen. Especially, we also talk about anticipatory anxiety. So as an event is going to occur, you start looping. Of, I don't know if I can do that, or I don't want to talk to him, or, you know, I don't know how I'm going to do. Like looping. And then again, that all leads into social connection. You know, time with people, family, friends. Or do you find that you're pulling back, you're more isolated? And then financial pressure. You know, a lot of people are, you know, if I don't get myself to work, I don't get paid, and you know, or I don't have PTO, or I've been sick. A lot of times what will happen is your body, if we don't take care of this, and this is our vehicle that carries us through life. Okay? This is the mainframe computer. Our brain is the mainframe computer. This is our vehicle. There are some people, and I imagine some people in here, who take better care of your personal vehicle than you do this one. With oil changes and changing spark plugs and making sure you have, like, you know, high octane fuel, but then you don't eat healthy, or you don't get enough sleep, or I'm isolated, or I have no energy, right? This is all we get. We can't do trade-ins like we can with vehicles, okay? So oftentimes then self-care, just with all of those erosion, all of how life buffets us, we just let go of taking care of this vehicle. How many people have recently flown? Anybody been on a plane recently? There you go. And what do they say about the oxygen mask? Yes. Put your oxygen mask on first. Because if you pass out, you can't help the person next to you. And a lot of us are trained to think about other people. Well, I'm going to take care of him, or I got to take care of my, you know, it looks like many of us in this room are in a sandwich generation age, where you may have older parents and you may have children, young kids, whether they're young or in high school or college, right? You're in the middle. And then you have to work on top of that. And so self-care gets pushed to the side. Maintenance of your vehicle gets neglected. I twice have had the unfortunate circumstance of not keeping, I think it was a Windstar, I had a van, and I did not keep enough gas in the tank, and I ruined the fuel pump. I blew the fuel pump out twice because I wasn't realizing that my Honda handles it differently, and it never did that. So I would run on fumes sometimes. But apparently a Windstar, not so much. Or no, it was a Dodge Grand Caravan. So if you have a Dodge Grand Caravan, never let your gas tank go below a quarter of a tank. Okay. But when I learned that lesson, I'm like, oh, I have to know that this vehicle doesn't run like this vehicle, and this one needs more. I have to take care of it. And taking care of yourself becomes critical. And if your compassion, if your self-care doesn't include yourself, then it is incomplete. It's incomplete. Because you're all you've got, and think about all the people in your life who depend on you and rely on you. But if you're wearing yourself down, you don't serve anybody, let alone yourself. One of the things that we know about, especially anxiety and depression, is that it is so connected in our body. A lot of the symptoms come out in our body. And I tell folks all the time, if you're not taking care of yourself physically and emotionally, your body, your vehicle will stop working. It'll come down with a chronic infection that you can't get rid of. You might break a bone or sprain an ankle, or some people develop fibromyalgia or another autoimmune condition, right? This will stop you if you don't take care of it, just like our other vehicles will. Just like my Dodge Grand Caravan, twice. That was an expensive lesson to learn. If you end up in the hospital or 3 rounds of antibiotics, start going, oh, I need to do something different. If your blood pressure is up, if your A1C is up, you know, so much of wellness is about also just know your numbers so that you can take better care of yourself and make healthier choices. Because in life, bad things happen. It just does. The world happens around us. We're kind of at the tail end, but I mean, we got through those 2 years of lockdown, which was brutal for many people, that sense of social connection. I'm still working with people who are saying, I'm having a hard time getting back out there. Like, I don't want to leave my home because it's now familiar and comfortable, and it's anxiety producing, you know? And so we can't mentally prepare always for bad things happening in our lives, because small things happen, you know, you get a flat tire or, you know, whatever, you find out that, whatever, you need a root canal or, but then also there are big things that happen, catastrophes and tragedies. We do have suicide deaths. We do have overdose deaths. We do have loved ones who are coming down with, you know, terminal conditions. Those big things. And we don't mentally prepare for that. You know, we're not firefighters and police officers who prepare for bad things, or physicians who prepare mentally. And so then, you know, we try to do the best we can, because we know that 27 things happen a day that are unexpected. That's from the research. From little things to big things. From, I can't find my keys, to, you know, my car's on, you know, the window got busted out, to, you know, I got some really, really bad news today, to divorce or bankruptcy or physical illness or job loss, right? 27 things, small and large. And think about how you respond to that, how you shift, how you adjust. Because sometimes those strong, sturdy oaks snap because this is out of my control. I can't do anything about it. And that leaves us feeling very powerless, very overwhelmed. Obviously, our Johnson County community has also been hit hard. You know, 6 weeks ago, I was doing a debriefing after the Greenwood Park Mall shooting. Did a community debriefing to talk to people. Nobody planned for that day. We don't mentally rehearse that. And then shortly after that, we had the shooting at Whiteland, at the bus stop, right? And those ripples affect us. I imagine some of you in this room have been touched directly or indirectly from both of those tragedies. And if you're not unpacking that and really thinking about what do I need to take care of myself, you just keep rolling and rolling and rolling, and then you might find that, like an oak, I snap. Because life is all about how you handle plan B. right? When things don't go as we want, we got to figure out, what else am I going to do? And we know that everything is choice. We get to choose. We can't choose what happens to us out here, just like you can't choose the weather. You can't say, I don't want it to be 102 heat index, or I don't want there to be a snowstorm, but we get to choose how we layer ourselves when we go into those conditions, how well we take care of ourselves. So I love quotes. So, this quote, with everything that has happened to you, you can either feel sorry for yourself, or you can treat what has happened as a gift. Everything has an opportunity to grow or be an obstacle to keep you from growing. You get to choose. We don't get to choose this, but we get to choose this, our response. Anybody have a tendency when bad things happen to ask why? Like, why is this happening? You may or may not raise your hands, but that's kind of a common, why? Like I hear a lot of times, that person is so good. I can't believe that happened to her. She just got through chemotherapy and now she's, back. She relapsed. Or, somebody's struggling with addiction. I thought they were doing so well and then they went back. And that why? That question, I always joke, will drive you crazy and it keeps me in business, right? But really the question that I want you to begin to replace that with, if that is looping in your brain, ask the question, how? How do I want to walk through this? Excuse my expression, sometimes I say, sometimes people are like, it's just a shitty day. Excuse my expression. But we get to choose. Am I going to walk through that day with resentment or bitterness or insecurity or frustration? Or am I going to try to walk through it with some measure of integrity or grace or compassion? Because maybe that person who was harsh or unkind or unfair is going through their own stuff that we may know nothing about. As I sit on the state board for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, we talk about suicide deaths, and a lot of times people say, well, that happened because whatever, his wife was divorcing him, or she had to file for bankruptcy. And that's really only the tip of the iceberg. What we know about icebergs is that we only see 10%. So that might be the precipitant, but that's not why a person dies by suicide. There is 90% down here that we do not see. And so as you're interacting with people, there's 90% of their life that you do not see. You may not know what their burdens are, what crosses they're carrying. Just like they're not seeing yours. But if we can go through with some compassion and beyond just existing, beyond just, suck it up, I'm gonna get through this. Because sometimes that's a oak mentality. Just like pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you're gonna get through this. Especially, sometimes rub spit on it, you'll be fine. And oftentimes, that's definitely kind of a male mentality. But we want people to thrive. We want people to enjoy life, not just exist in life. Oops. So we get to choose, are we going to react? If you go to the doctor and they hit that one part of your knee and you can't, unless you cut that tendon or whatever it is, you can't stop the knee, that reaction. So think about how you respond to stress, all of those things. Some people just get depressed. Many people get angry, irritable, frustrated, harsh, gruff. Some people burst into tears. It's more of a woman thing, but, not always. So how do you react versus when we can stop and pause and go, okay, so this is what I'm going to choose to do instead. I'm going to respond. I'm going to think about how I want to handle this right now. Right now it might suck to be you, but how do I want to handle it? How do I want to walk through this? And recognizing that when those things happen, we can evaluate if a situation is bad, is it an inconvenience or a tragedy? And there are some tragedies. The Greenwood Mall shooting, tragedy. The young man at the Whiteland bus stop, tragedy. Job loss. In America, it's an inconvenience. Now, it may be that it completely upends your life, right? Or a car accident or a health crisis. I remind people all the time. And I'm not trying to dismiss those things, but if we can evaluate this, I tell people all the time, if you were going to have a health crisis, the place to be is America, where we have access to healthcare. As I traveled through East Africa for a 3-week stint some years ago, and like nothing, I got nothing. Right? So we do have resources here. Even though life feels heavy and may take you to your knees, we do have resources. And there's this term that we use called post-traumatic growth. We all have heard about post-traumatic stress disorder, right? But post-traumatic growth is recognizing that out of suffering can come great good. So are you able to have a long view of life so that when something bad happens, do you have a longer view of, I'll get through this somehow? Not by myself, because sometimes when we don't know how we're going to get through it, it's because somebody carries us to the other side. A lot of times, especially when I work with survivors of suicide loss. And we have a retreat coming up at the end of the month. And if suicide has touched your life, you might want to grab one of the brochures. But, you know, people will say, I don't know how I got through this. And I said, it's because people carry you. We'll get you there. I mean, any military folk, you know that your battle buddy is taking you out. You're not staying there. They're taking you, right? And having those people in your life who you know are going to carry you is vital. It's vital. And again, reminding yourself, okay, this is a tough time right now. This is a painful time. This situation sucks. But holding on to the belief and the hope that on the other side, it's going to work out. Somehow, some way, it's going to work out. Another quote, and the reason I love this quote, which is, I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love even when not feeling it. And I believe in God even when God is silent. Now, I love that quote and those words, but I love it more because it was written by somebody who was living through the Holocaust at the time. And when I think about the level of despair that individual must have been dealing with, something that hopefully we will never know or see in our lifetime. I can't ever imagine that happening here. But somehow that individual was able to pull some measure of hope and belief to sustain him or her despite the situation and to see beyond. Keeping that long view of life is critical to good mental health. I don't know if anybody's watched, there's a movie called The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, and the quote is, everything will be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, then it's not the end. Right? Long view. And it's important too that we find those things that can help remind us, help reset our minds. For me, it's quotes. For some people, it's books. For some people, it's music. Like finding all of that. When this gets twisted, finding that. Looking for the blessings amidst the burdens. When life presses on you, when life sucks, what are the blessings? What are those things to be grateful for? How do you hold on to that? And that becomes a training. And it's one small thing you can do. In the therapy world, we actually call these things cognitive behavioral therapy. Basically, our cognitions, our thoughts, if I change them, it impacts my behavior and it impacts my feelings. Now, I actually call cognitive behavioral therapy common sense, right? Because if I think more positively or hopefully, I'm going to feel better, as opposed to like Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, depressed and down all the time, and everything's negative and everything is awful, and right? And training yourself to go, okay, today was a shitty day, right? But it's going to be okay, because these are things I'm grateful for. I have a buddy who just called and texted me or just said, how are you doing? I've been thinking about you. Or, you know, you're in the Starbucks line and somebody, car in front of you paid for your your food, your order, right? Small and big things. And if we can train our brain, and it's not training it just to be like rose-colored glasses, everything is fine, because life is hard, but it's training it to look beyond, because whatever we focus on, whatever we see gets illuminated. It's like having a flashlight. So if I flash it here, it's going to get bigger. And so some people, especially with anxiety and depression, go around looking for dark clouds. I mean, think about some of the folks that you work with, or it might be you. Like, oh yeah, you know, just hit that darn pothole. Or yeah, have to, you know, got this or this or this, right? Always weighing you down. Because our bodies record every thought, feeling, and emotion. So what you put in to the brain comes out in the body in some form or fashion. And negativity erodes those negative thoughts, those depressive thoughts. And those are symptoms of depression and symptoms of anxiety. So it's not saying that there's anything like wrong with you as far as you're a bad person. Those are symptoms. If you had a persistent cough, or every time you coughed, your chest hurt, let's hope you would eventually go to the doctor, because he or she might say, well, that sounds really bad, and by the way, you've got bronchitis. And if you don't take care of it, it may become pneumonia. And then we're gonna have to put you in the hospital, and then you're gonna be off work longer. So let's take care of it sooner than later. And that's the same thing with our thoughts, bringing them back, pulling them back. For folks who do tend to loop about negative things happening, again, we call that catastrophic thinking. I work with a lot of folks, you know, they might go, oh, I feel a lump. I think I have cancer. I go, well, go talk to the doctor, check that out, right? Or the boss wants to talk to me, can't be good news. And then they'll come back and they go, they actually like gave me a commendation. I go, okay. Right? So that catastrophic thinking, always that negative. I grew up with a mother who really, until her dying day, suffered mercilessly with generalized anxiety disorder. So everything was a catastrophe in her mind. Everything was dangerous. Everything was something bad's gonna happen. That's how she lived her life. And it's a really hard way to live. Because what happens, all those negative thoughts dump adrenaline and cortisol your brain dumps adrenaline and cortisol into your body. Those are stress hormones. So then your body is jacked up. It's like drinking 3 espressos and wondering why you can't fall asleep. And so, like, what can I do to quiet this? And one of them is don't experience stress twice. If something bad is going to happen, if you anticipate something bad's going to happen, rather than the anticipation of, oh, the boss wants to talk to me, that can't be good news, just wait till you talk to the boss. And usually, often, by the time that event happens, somebody goes, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought. That wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't anything. I made it bigger in my mind. Pulling yourself back. I talked with one woman who, she's like, I know I have cancer. Like, I had blood work done, I have cancer. And I go, oh, well, when did you get the results? And she goes, well, I didn't. I get them on Tuesday. And I said, do you want cancer for the weekend? No. I go, well, you get to choose. Like, you get to choose in your mind whether you have cancer. But please call me on Tuesday and let me know. Because she was convinced of it. Because what will happen, those thoughts, those loops, we make statements of fact about them. By her saying, instead of her saying, I believe I have cancer, or I'm afraid I have cancer, she's like, I know I have cancer. I go, well, you don't know until the results come back. Call me on Tuesday. And then, if you have cancer, we can freak out. I'll freak out with you. But I go, you get to choose whether you have cancer this weekend. This was on a Thursday. So then she called me on Tuesday. She's like, hey, Christine, I don't have cancer. And she goes, and I didn't have cancer this weekend. Right? Because we do get to choose what we hold on to up here. Research says that we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts that go through our mind a day. 60 or 70. So we're not responsible for the thought coming in. But if we reach out and grab it, it's like if we had 60 or 70,000 leaves swirling around us, and we reached out and grabbed one, and then we start complaining because I'm holding on to this darn leaf. And I go, well, let go of it. Right? Just because it comes in doesn't mean you have to hold on to it. And so reminding ourselves that it's all good, even when it's bad, it's all good. Like we're just learning something. We're changing, we're growing. And it gives us an opportunity to rejuvenate ourselves, knowing that all of that happens, all of those thoughts and life stressors hit us. Gives us an opportunity to go, okay, so how am I going to take care of myself? How am I going to rejuvenate myself? Again, if this is the vehicle, maybe right now, I don't always put high octane in my car, but maybe I should. Maybe I need to right now. I don't know if anybody right now struggles with seasonal affective disorder. Indiana has some of the highest rates of seasonal affective disorder. It is real. It's when you start shifting, like depression or low energy or fatigue starts creeping in as our days start getting shorter and the weather turns. So, I don't think I have this on any of the slides, but 4 things you can do if you struggle with a mood shift as we go into fall and then winter. And I tell people, I want you to start September, October, and then let's see when spring lightens up. But the first thing you can do is you can get a light box. You can buy, it's like the size of an iPad. And there's one called the Happy Light. I have no interest, like financial investment in Happy Light. It's just easy to remember. And then 3 supplements you can take if you struggle with that. Fish oil, vitamin D3, and B12. B vitamins actually help our adrenal system, and our adrenal system is our energy source in the vehicle. So that's like putting some high octane fuel in, just to give it a little more perk when it's running slower. So we want to have you restore yourself, to give yourself more energy, to thrive, to nourish, to take care of yourself. Keep calm and rejuvenate, right? Just take care, take care. And this is a great quote. When the well is dry, we know the value of water. Basic, right? When you're thirsty, when you're parched, when you just have nothing left to give, that's when you gotta feed yourself. Actually, hopefully before that, but you know even more so in those moments. Mindfulness is definitely a term that we hear a lot. And simplistically, mindfulness is just about being present-centered in this present moment. And I think I mentioned I started working in the addictions field. And one of the phrases we use in the addictions field is the term halt, because we know that people who are in recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction need to halt or stop if they find they become too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired, because those are high relapse times. So I've added angry, anxious, or agitated if you're finding that you're unsettled. And so, simplistically with hunger, and again, I mean, we all know protein and fruits and vegetables are the best for us. I mean, we just know that. So you don't have to be a rocket science, you don't have to be a medical doctor, but we don't always make those choices. I maintain that ice cream is my favorite food group. So, but I also know I know how my body feels if I get too much sugar. It feels different. But some people are running on caffeine and sugar to do their jobs, to get through the day, to try to push beyond that fatigue, that depression, right? And then that messes with your sleep. And then oftentimes becoming too angry, too anxious, too agitated. Water is truly the best thing you can drink. Our body is about 65 to 70% water. That's what this vehicle needs. This is our fuel. So again, making those choices. If you find you become too angry, too anxious, too agitated, figuring out, what do I do to calm myself down? Maybe instead of, I know when I go home, if I hit the couch, I'm out. Like once I stop moving, I'm out. So if I'm gonna take a walk or be active or get to the gym, I have to literally not sit down on the couch or I'm down for a count. Even if I tell myself and I set my timer, well, I'm just gonna sit for 10 minutes. Like it's a lie that I tell myself, right? So finding, and that can be based on being an introvert or an extrovert. Maybe you just need to go read. Maybe you just need to go sit out on the back deck. Maybe you need to take a walk around the block. Maybe you just need to put your earbuds on and go to the gym. Right? Like do those things that help you discharge all of that pent-up stress and anxiety. Lonely, again, meaningful connection. We can't say it enough. We are social beings. And even if you're an introvert, connection is vital. You might only have a small tribe of 3 or 5 or 7 people versus somebody who's got, hundreds of people on their Facebook or texting. But having those people who can carry you and lift you up and you can just discharge when you need to. And then tired. We need restorative sleep. How many people struggle with sleep? How many people are willing to admit they struggle with sleep, right? So, sleep is one of the most critical things we can do to help stabilize us emotionally. So for some people, I recommend if you need a scent, because again, this vehicle is what we see, what we smell, what we touch, what we hear, right? This is a sensory vehicle. So lavender is a naturally soothing scent and can calm and quiet you down. There's research. So you can even get like essential oil and just put a little lavender under your nose just to calm yourself down or to help fall asleep. You can put it on your big toe or your heel because our foot is the blueprint of our body. People who do reflexology, they can hit a point on your foot and relieve a headache, right? Because it's all interconnected. We're just one big circuit board in here. Some people take bath before bed or a hot shower because then physiologically there's that cooling effect. There is, if you really struggle with sleep, I recommend there's a program through Hemisync called Sleeping Through the Rain, and you can get earbuds, and then the sounds go right, left hemisphere, like you're going to be hearing just sounds. And it's retraining your brain because our brain is in 4 waves. It's in beta, alpha, theta, delta. Beta is where we spin, and some people are even in sheer beta and really agitated, anxious, angry. Alpha is when we're awake and alert. Theta is when we're in meditative or pre-sleep. Some of you may be there now from listening to me drone on. And then delta is where we get restorative sleep. But what happens when you have sleep disruption is you don't always get down into delta waves. So maybe you're sleeping, maybe you're not sleeping enough, but maybe you're sleeping 8 or 10 hours and you still wake up and you're fatigued. It probably has to do with not getting down into delta waves. So you can, that's like a download for, I don't know, $14, $15. Hemisync, Sleeping Through the Rain. Weighted blanket can help. It's what we do with babies, right? We swaddle them, we wrap them up, right? That pressure helps sometimes induce sleep. And this is a tough one for all of us because again, we're talking brain activity at this point, but no television or electronics an hour before bed. And I'm guilty of that as well. But even if you can pull yourself back, because what happens is it puts your brain up in alpha waves. It keeps your brain awake. So your brain is awake even though your body is tired. And the brain, if it's still going, that's why I used to fall asleep to television and then all of a sudden I'm like beginning to dream about 2.5 Men because my brain was listening to what was going on. Yeah, imagine Charlie Sheen in my brain, right? And so, pull that back. Read instead. Quiet your mind. Chamomile, honey chamomile, it can soothe you if you like tea. Sleep masks, some people use that or use darkening curtains. A dark environment, because what happens is our brain is entrained to light, so it wakes up. That's why as it comes, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30 in the morning, we begin to wake up when the sun's coming. That our brain is entrained to light. So if you don't have a darkening curtain or you're light sensitive, then you can get sleep masks. If you get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I encourage people, just put a rope to the door, but don't turn the light on. Because your brain will wake itself up. The room should be cool, 65 to 70 degrees. And if you're not taking another sleep supplement, I recommend melatonin. Melatonin is a natural hormone that already occurs in our body. And it's the hormone that gives us the darkening effect, so that as the day goes on, we do naturally get more tired. And so it can help us go to sleep, it can help quiet the mind. Now, if you're taking any type of sleep supplement, whether it's melatonin or, Tylenol PM or, a prescribed sleep medication, I tell people, once you take it, get into bed. Sometimes people will say, well, I took it and it didn't help. And I go, well, what did you do after you took it? Well, I was checking email, and then I, made lunch for the kids for tomorrow, and I was writing some checks out. I go, sleep aids are not tranquilizers. They're aids, and you need to aid it. So get in bed and aid it so your brain can quiet down and drift off. So, once again, glass of water. Stephen Covey, a lot of people have heard of him. He talks about a strategic pause. So what I want you to do right now is just close your eyes for a moment. If you have water, or you can pretend that you're drinking a glass of water, take a sip. And then stretch your body and look towards the light, whether it's the light here or the light outside. Just stretch. And think of something hopeful. That's right. Just stretch. Tell him to stretch, right? Your buddy's holding you accountable, right? Think of something hopeful. What are some of the thoughts that you had? Something hopeful. Any hopeful thoughts? Like, Christine, we're hoping you're done. So, I know that this is being recorded, so if you're inclined to watch it again. I also, back in November, did this workshop in a 3-hour workshop, and so I have that available online for sale if you're inclined, or if you think somebody else needs some self-care, and just how to balance. And then finally, final quote, and then we can take some questions if you have some. It's peace does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of all the lows and still be calm in your heart. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here. And if anybody has any questions, I am happy to answer them. All right. Have a wonderful day. There's some paper over there. Make sure you take one of those strategy sheets. And if you're interested and you need to reach out to me, do not hesitate to do so. You can reach me through my email. Thank you. Have a great day.